Hello everyone, it's Mr. McKeever here, and today we're going to talk about the Crimean War and the unifications of Italy and Germany. So it seems like there's a lot of stuff here, and there kind of is, but it's all kind of a weird part of a big puzzle here. So let's start with the Crimean War. So this is a conflict that's going to begin with Russia. And it's important to remember at this time period, Russia kind of has this view of invincibility going on. You know, it was Alexander who was the one who beat Napoleon in the invasion of Russia and kind of outsmarted him, and then the Quadruple Alliance, he was largely influenced by Alexander and the Russians. So things have kind of shifted, and Russia is kind of viewed as a dominant power in Europe during this time period. And kind of scary for most of Europe. They are a little terrified of what's going on here. Everyone's freaking out a little bit, as you can see that, Russia might be a little bit overpowered. So what does this mean? Well, Europe is coming to terms with a very strong Russian power, and Russia is kind of looking at this as an opportunity for them to really take that next step as a European nation. For them, that opportunity meant, taking territory from kind of the weakest member of the European community, and that was the Ottoman Empire. So Russia looked to expand their borders in the south to potentially control all of the Black Sea in the area that we call Crimea. And they kind of figured Europe wouldn't really get involved because Europe had been picking away at the Ottoman Empire's influence for years now, and they kind of figured that they would just keep the European armies to themselves and kind of let Russia have its way with the Ottoman Empire. Well, is that what happened? Yeah. Yeah, that's not exactly what happens when Russia invades the Ottoman Empire. Despite their, general not liking the Ottoman Empire, and the fact that these countries are dealing with stuff with their own nations, France and Britain are going to team up with the Ottoman Empire to stop Russian expansion. And this is huge, because this has never happened before. European nations have gone to war with the Ottoman Empire for hundreds of years and never been forced to deal with other Europeans defending the Ottomans. So France and Britain get involved. Austria and Prussia take a bit of a step back. They don't actively get involved in the fighting because they share a border with Russia, and there's the fears of retaliation against their nations. So the Crimean War turns less than what Russia wanted. The British-French alliance with the Ottomans ends up resulting in the defeat for the Russian Empire, and this is a disaster. At the Treaty of Paris, not only does Russia lose the conflict, they also lost influence over the Black Sea and the Danube River, which is a disaster for Russian trade, and the Russian economy is not going to recover from this. They will lose their claim as the protector of the Eastern Orthodox Church, and that whole invincibility thing is kind of tossed out the window. And this is going to be the first step in a long downward spiral for the Russian monarchy. The Crimean War is a disaster. Everyone assumed Russia was going to win handedly against the Ottoman Empire, and when they don't, this is bad. So that's not great. Well, what else happens? Well, the Crimean War is actually going to be the official death knell concert of Europe. When Britain and France turned against another European power, one they had allied with Russia, the concert of Europe and everything it stood for is tossed out the window. So this is going to be a huge moment because this is where everything becomes interconnected. Because the European powers are not going to be defending each other against nationalist revolutions or liberalist revolutions, this is going to open the door for other countries to finally take the steps towards unification. The Ottoman Empire is also going to have an interesting time period. So what is the Ottoman Empire going to do after this pretty cataclysmic event in European history here? Well, it's going to really inspire the Ottoman Empire. They're going to try to really re-examine Ottoman life and figure out how do they adapt to this modern world. The Crimean War is considered the first modern European conflict, with first modern warfare machines, technology is evolving. Like, this is a pretty significant event, and the Ottoman Empire really only survives because of the British and the French, and this is their wake-up call. So we will see the Sultan during this time period send out emissaries across Europe. How do we go ahead and really modernize this Ottoman Empire in this changing environment of Europe? So what we see is a plan. Is to promote civic equality for all religions. And the idea behind this would be that it would help to unify the Ottomans together against external threats. How about they're going to lay out the immediate and direct rights of all people, delineated those rights for all people, and they're going to be equal rights for peoples within the empire. They're going to make it easier to promote business with non-Muslim peoples in the Ottoman Empire, hoping to spur on the Ottoman economy. They're going to abolish torture, provide state schools for education, and even allow foreigners to own property. These were all significant reforms in the Ottoman Empire. Will it fix things? No. This is not going to make everything better now. Nationalism is still going to be a plague for the Ottoman Empire, and it'll eventually help eat away at their territory throughout the next 50 years or so of their history. But that's not the focus of right now. Right now, we're going to look at two individual powers that are going to really radically change the map of Europe. And the first one of these powers that we're going to look at is Italy. Over the course of the first half of the 19th century, Italians are going to become very preoccupied with the notion of governing themselves. The Italian peninsula has been divided amongst European powers for a while now. We have not seen a unified Italian peninsula since the fall of the Roman Empire. But there is one dominant European kingdom right now that is going to be the ground stage for all this unification efforts, and that's going to be Piedmont Sardinia. And inspired by the ideas of people like Giuseppe Mazzini and Giuseppe Garibaldi, the Italians are going to latch on to Piedmont Sardinia. And the ball starts rolling. So, let's look at what happens here. Giuseppe Mazzini is a nationalist author during this time period. He becomes the face of nationalism in Europe, and he does it by taking nationalism and really fusing it with the ideas of Romanticism. This romantic republicanism, as he kind of describes it, is going to make the Italian people just become enamored with the notion of self-governing. So we have this incredible quote by Giuseppe Mazzini. In principle, as in the ideas formerly laid down by the men influencing every national party, nationality ought only to be to humanity that which the division of labor is in a workshop, the recognized symbol of association, the assertion of the individuality of a human group called by its geographical position, its traditions, and its language to fulfill a special function in the European work of civilization. So what does that mean? Well, Mazzini is very clear in his belief that nationalism is tremendous for a people, and it should inspire a group of people to be united in their own nation state, but it should never be used to show the importance of one nationality over another. Each body is unique, each body is special, and it should be cherished in that way. So this is really going to inspire the Italian people together. Now what they need is someone actually carrying out this inspiration. And as great as this is, until we see the arrival of Camillo Cavour, nothing happens with nationalism in Italy. Well, in 1852, the Sardinian king Victor Emmanuel II is going to appoint an upstart politician, a guy by the name of Camillo Cavour, as his prime minister. And Cavour is incredibly intelligent. He is a strategist. He knows his goal is to unify Italy because he can see moves ahead. He knows how to manipulate situations in order to get his desired outcome. In many ways, he's very Machiavellian in that notion. He's willing to do whatever it takes to achieve his desired goal. And his desired goal is to strengthen Piedmont Sardinia. And to him, the very clear way to do that is to unify all of Italy under Victor Emmanuel. So he's going to start making some moves that at first don't seem to really serve that much of a purpose, but they are all part of a long-term plan. What this means is that in 1858, he's going to ally the Italians with the French, which is interesting considering the French hold significant portions of Italian territory that he's eventually going to want. Well, he does this because he's trying to eliminate players in the game. He aligns with the French to attack the Austrians, to try to drive the Austrians out of northern Italy. And he does this. He gets them out of every area except of an area called Venetia, which is where the city of Venice is. So this eliminates the Austrians from the game. Alright, well, things are moving in the right direction. But that's only a small part of Italy. He needs more. So he works with Giuseppe Garibaldi. Giuseppe Garibaldi, one of these nationalists from southern Italy, has been marching through southern Italy, gaining more and more support for a unified Italian state. Cavour meets with Garibaldi, and the two of them decide to unite together the southern conquests of Garibaldi along with Piedmont Sardinia, creating a much stronger, more unified Italian state. And he does this out of this nationalism that Giuseppe Mazzini has inspired in the Italian people. So now the pieces are starting to fall into play. Nationalism is uniting the Italians together. Now, when eventually a conflict breaks out between the Germans and the French and the Austrians and all that takes place, eventually Italy is going to be able to get a hold of Venetia from the Austrians. This now relatively unified Italy is now only looking to take one last piece to really unify the people together, and that's actually the areas right around Rome. These are areas known as the Papal States that have been controlled by the Pope for hundreds of years. Well, Cavour and the Pope are going to exchange some words, and eventually there's an agreement that is agreed upon. The Vatican is going to remain an independent entity, Vatican City, but the rest of the areas of Rome and its surrounding territories are going to be consolidated into Piedmont Sardinia. And it's at this point that, for all intents and purposes, Italy is united. And Victor Emmanuel II is going to be crowned King of Italy, a unified Italian state for the first time since 452. And that's incredible for the Italian people. Well, there's another player in this game too, and that's Germany, or at least the German peoples. The German peoples have been divided amongst foreign powers since the time of Charlemagne. So we're talking about 1300 years. And they're looking to kind of follow the example of what the Italians did on the Italian peninsula. They have some framework just like the Italians did. Piedmont Sardinia was that centralized piece that the Italians unify around. Prussia is going to be that centralized piece that the Germans unify around. It is the strongest of the German states. It is the only independent German state. And it's got a strong military already in place. So what we need now is that organizer. And interestingly enough, it's going to be a series of liberal riots that's going to bring that into fruition. In 1848, if we remember when we talked about the revolutions of 1848, rioters in Berlin are going to force a convention to craft a liberal constitution in Germany. And this is going to be pretty influential in Germany because they're not going to get that constitution. Instead, a parliament is put into place, a Diet, and this Diet is going to be largely ran by the conservative class in Germany, the Junkers. Eventually, those Junkers are going to appoint a prime minister by the name of Otto von Bismarck. And Bismarck is going to change everything. Bismarck is here to save the day. For as tremendous and wonderful as Camillo Cavour was in articulating a plan, manipulating situations, Bismarck was probably 10 times better. He is the master of realpolitik. He ruled with what he described as policies of blood and iron. He was a realist. He understood the world it was. He didn't live in some idealized world of romanticism or of nationalism and liberalism or anything. He didn't care about these great concepts that people were rallying behind in the 1800s. All he cared about was the world as it is. And the world as it is dirty and it's mean. And he's like, you know what? I can work in this world. And he does. And his realpolitik mindset is going to radically shape the political situation of Europe for the next 60 years. So Bismarck is going to view what is happening in Italy as, an inspiration. Hey, they're trying to unify together. We can do the same thing. But he has to lay out a plan ahead of time because Bismarck is aware that, Europe has always kind of had a preoccupation with the Germans, kind of viewing them as very warlike peoples. And he realizes that if he starts going out there and just conquering territory, Europe has, recently gone through that conquering mindset with Napoleon. And the rest of Europe is going to jump in. Much like they did in the Crimean War, he needs to find a way to make sure that the European powers do not become involved in his steps for unification. So he's going to kind of manipulate events here. First thing he does, he actually wages a small war with the people of Denmark. And these peoples, they never really have a stance against the Prussians. So Prussia is going to pretty easily dominate the people of Denmark in the wars of Schleswig and Holstein and take some small territories for the Prussian people. This is not a great war in Europe. It avoids all of the major powers in Europe. It's designed for one sole purpose, and that sole purpose is to inspire the Prussian people. And not just the Prussian people, the people of the German Confederation, because he's laying steps out. So what does he do next? Well, step 2 is going to be a conflict with Austria, but he realizes he cannot just declare war on Austria because he's going to be viewed as an aggressor and it may encourage other European powers to become involved. So what he does is he provokes war. He stations the Prussian army at the border of Austria and he continually reinforces it and actually gets Austria to declare war on him in 1866. This is significant for a variety of reasons. One, it's an alliance between the Prussian state and Italy that is going to free Venetia up for the Italians. And it's also going to really weaken Austrian control over the German Confederation because the Prussian army just runs into Austria and conquers it really, really fast, really before Austria even has an opportunity to defend itself. And what this does is doesn't allow Germany to just conquer Austria. That was never the intent. Bismarck just goes to the Austrians and says, hey, I want you guys to allow the German Confederation to vote as to which European power they'd like to work with. Considering that Vienna has already fallen and Austria is kind of willing at this point to do almost anything to get the Prussians out of their country, they accept. And due to the nationalism inspired by Prussia in the wars of Schleswig and Holstein, and how quickly they knocked around the Austrians in the Austro-Prussian War, the German Confederation chooses to ally itself with the Prussians. So in 1867, the northern states of the German Confederation, which had been under Austrian influence, now will join Prussia. And Prussia has made a huge power play in Europe. But there's still significant portions of the German Confederation, the German states, that are not part of this new Prussian state. These areas in southern Germany are controlled by the French, places like Alsace and Lorraine. These areas are vital to Bismarck's view of a unified Germany, and that leads us, like a boss, to his masterpiece. And his masterpiece is something that we call the Franco-Prussian War. And in order to win over these southern German states, who are actually Catholic and share that heritage with the French, Bismarck is going to provoke another war, but this time with France. He's actually going to kind of goad the French king at the time, Napoleon III, into a conflict by creating a false telegram called the Ems telegram. And this Ems telegram is supposed to be actually, according to the telegram, a document from Napoleon insulting the German people. But Napoleon never created it. Bismarck created it, fabricated it, had it published to make it seem like the French were, insulting the Germans, to rile up the German peoples in the southern territories, knowing that Napoleon III, would never really be able to contradict this, and it actually encourages Louis Napoleon to declare war on Prussia. But Bismarck is always a step ahead. As soon as the French declare war, a Prussian army, which is right on the borders of Alsace and Lorraine, marches into France and just beelines it straight to Paris. In the process, they captured Napoleon III. And in doing so, the Franco-Prussian War ends very quickly. Its impact will be left on Europe for years. France is destroyed, dominated, Napoleon III is captured, and it's actually at the Palace of Versailles, Kaiser Wilhelm will be crowned the leader of a unified Germany. And this is such a slap in the face for the French people. But Germany's now a nation. And it's not just a nation. It is the nation on the European continent. Thanks to the efforts of Otto von Bismarck. Because he is like a boss. Thanks.